Yeah, so considering the last video and what we saw, that time, I thought it appropriate to continue with Vivian here. We will. Suits, whenever you just fold in the other direction, they all just look at this. It all gets messed up, but it doesn't matter. So okay, Ichigo Kurosaki. We're gonna be talking about discussion, theories about his powers, where they come from, everything like that. The symbolism of how Kubo designed it, all of that. We're going to talk about that because there is a lot to talk about. A lot of which I don't think is properly explored by Bleach fans. A lot of cases, so I'm going to be talking about all of it. Look at the way the tie is flopping. Nothing I can do about it. So I can get more into. Ooh, yes, I do have pants. If you wondered, there they are. Look at that. Okay. Okay. This is funny. So, Ichigo, let's go over the first thing. Because I see this all the time, and, I see just inadequate answers for it in a lot of cases at this point. So, the first question, which is something every person who's getting into Bleach asks at least once. Very simple. Why trying to work with what I can here. Why is Ichigo in a permanent Shikai? Very good question, and I don't see very appropriate answers for it nowadays. So, the most common one I see is that. This is funny. The most common one I see is that they say, well, he just has a permanent type Shikai. Because Yoruichi said that. He has a permanent type Shikai, right? Implying that, there are certain types that are always in Shikai. Early on, could believe that. Only problem is, we're at the end of Bleach at this point, and can you name any character other than Ichigo that has a permanent Shikai? You can't. You might say Kenpachi Zaraki, but if you've said that, then you haven't seen the final arc, because Kenpachi does have a Shikai, and it is different from his sword. People confuse this a lot due to two things. The first is when Kenpachi first appears, and he says, oh yeah, him and Ichigo are so alike. Except the reason Kenpachi's sword always remained the same initially is because he didn't know his sword's name. Ichigo knew his sword's name, yet it was in permanent Shikai. So, clearly that's a different case. Permanent Shikai is different from no Shikai because you don't know the sword's name. I mean, you have the amazing scene where Ichigo, and he's like, behind Uehara, and then he turns, Zangetsu, and then, he calls its name for the first time, and then boom, Shikai. So, that's the only time Ichigo calls Zangetsu, by the way. We have no clue what his release command is. People like to throw around things, but he doesn't have a release command. That's the only time he ever calls Zangetsu to come out. So, I looked, right? I wanted to see if there's anything, but there isn't. That's it. But, man, this hurts my shoulders, but works better than the last one where I needed to give you the fisheye lens by being right in your face. And you can at least meme this one up, right? Anyway, so let's talk about something. So that's the permanent Shikai. That's the first answer. It's an inappropriate answer. The second answer is this, which is maybe a bit more reasonable. It's that Ichigo's Ryatsu is so strong that his sword was forced into Shikai, permanent Shikai, and he can't control his Ryatsu, so he can't turn it off back to normal. Is basically what it is. And again, maybe in the beginning of the story you could say this, but we're at the final arc at this point, and you're telling me Ichigo in his final Shikai can't turn off his Shikai? He can't seal his Zanpakuto back? You couldn't even say it's something to do with an Asauchi because he gets an Asauchi, right? Nah, I don't believe that. I'd be more comfortable here. This is funny, but I don't think so. This whole he can't seal his sword from Shikai to normal. I don't agree with that. Because I will say this. I mean, firstly, the obvious. He goes from Bankai to Shikai pretty easily. If you couldn't seal it, why isn't he in permanent Bankai as well? I don't know. But, the second reason is just I don't see Ichigo being like that inexperienced and that, unqualified with what he can do at this point in the series. I just don't see that as reasonable. So, no, I don't believe that one. That's a classic one, but I don't believe it. Because one thing that's interesting is it's never stated within the series why Ichigo has a permanent Shikai. And he does for the entire series, right? His sealed sword that he has in the beginning, that is the only time we see Ichigo's sealed Zanpakuto. It's normal state. After that, complete form, everything like that. Like, you can't say it's because his sword was incomplete. You can't say it's because of that, because of an Asauchi or anything like that, because, his final form, sword is Shikai as well. So, here's my theory. Here's my theory as to that. So we're gonna go into plenty of things on this one, so buckle down. My theory as to why Ichigo is a permanent Shikai is because of his Quincy powers. Now, a lot of people also say this, well, Quincy powers, so he just has like a permanent Shikai. Let me explain to you why in a bit more depth. Why I think that's the case. Firstly, we should say Ichigo is the only like Quincy Shinigami ever seen in the entire story. No other example of that exists in the entirety of Bleach. So Ichigo is unique. So if you were to say, on average, a Quincy with Shinigami powers is going to have a permanent Shikai, it's just a regular Quincy Shinigami thing, you could say that, and I will say that. I think that's the case. Any Quincy who is also Shinigami will have a permanent Shikai as well. And the reason I believe is because, Quincies have the innate ability of attracting and manipulating Reishi to themselves. Ichigo demonstrates this ability. Again, we will get into this. But my theory as to why his Shikai is permanent is very simple. It's kind of complex. It's kind of complex. I just sit up and catch myself. I feel like I'm a monk over here, with the way this is, but also sniveling. Good. Yeah, hopefully I'm not coronaed up, right? Hopefully it's all okay. Keeps happening in videos. Maybe it's something with how much I'm talking. But anyway, disregarding that, Quincy's have the innate ability of attracting Reishi toward them. So of course the Zanpakuto is the manifestation of the Reishi. Let's get that in place, right? Everything's getting messed up, right? But the Zanpakuto is the manifestation of the Shinigami's Reishi. It is their tool for exerting their Reishi. Quincy's, spawn other thing is usually bows. We're going with traditional Ishida route. But, that's how it is in the case of Shinigami and Quincy's, is that they manipulate and absorb Reishi. And even in the last arc, I believe, Quillhei says, Orihime says, when observing Quillhei, Quincy's don't emit Reishi, they absorb it. Which is interesting to say the least. I mean, they admit it, but, you get it. So, Ichigo, his Zanpakuto, maybe his is a unique case because of how large his Reishi is, but I don't think it's really unique. I think if there were any Quincy Shinigami, which Ichigo's son is as well, by the way, so maybe him having what seems to be like Ichigo's old Bankai has something to do with this as well. Maybe that's his Shikai now. Which would be kind of weird, but I don't know. I never thought of that because I didn't care about Ichigo's son. But his sword looks like the old incomplete Bankai. Maybe it has something to do with Ichigo's final Bankai looking like his Shikai. Maybe it has something to do. That is his Shikai. He has a permanent Shikai too because he's a Quincy Shinigami. I'm not even going into that because I don't know anything about Ichigo's son. We don't know anything about his son. That's all I'll throw out for now. If I make up some theory, then I'll get back to you on that. But for now, it's about Kurosaki-kun. It's about Ichigo. It's not about his son that we know nothing about. But no. So this is memeable. But so okay. Ichigo's Zanpakuto absorbs Reishi within itself. And what I'm saying is, Ichigo when he this is one thing to remember. When Ichigo was fighting Renji, um, there was an interesting thing that happened. He powered up, like his hidden power came out or whatever. And his sealed sword is just a basic katana, giant katana, but it has these blue strings at the bottom of it. I'm not sure what these blue strings mean, but what happens is they snap off, and then Ichigo charges at Renji. And his Ryatsu spikes, and he actually kind of beats Renji. Almost beats him, like he does a good job against him. But then Byakuya finishes him, and this is a very famous scene in Bleach. But what I'm under the impression of is that when the moment those strings snapped on Ichigo's sword, that is when he reached the appropriate reishi to go Shikai. But he didn't because he didn't know his sword's name. So his Ryatsu just spiked. So later, when he calls his Zanpakuto's name, it comes out immediately once he learns the name. But the other thing about that, because the Uehara training is very poignant, and you really need to pay attention to it because it's so important when understanding Ichigo's powers. It's also super short, so it's kind of problematic. But the thing that happens. So I'm going to point out several things when Ichigo goes Shikai for the first time. So you have the scene where what happens is that Ichigo he becomes a soul. And he's able to box with Ururu kinda, and Ururu is really good. Ururu, I guess I should say Ururu, Japanese mode. Ururu is very anglicized, but whatever. But he's boxing with her, and she's super strong by the way. Very underestimated. Who was it she beat up? She beat up that dude Renji was fighting, the Arankar. The guy who was with Xiaolong and Edorat and everything, Grimjazz crew. She came in and beat him up. She's epic. Ududu, a fan. But not in that way you're a creep. But Misha's kawaii to see, but just chill, man. Yeah. God, man. But so so okay, Ichigo he becomes a soul, then he does he's training, and then he his soul chain is about to go in, and he becomes a hollow. And that's a very interesting scene. I mean, it's difficult to explain that scene. It's probably just because what happened is that his soul was about to he was a demi hollow in that state, of course, but his mask was just manifesting. I would assume because he's a visor, and what happens is his hollow reishi was just erupting because he was losing control of his powers. So then it just started forming the mask anyway. If it continued going, I think he would have become a hollow. But that's how it's forming. Uehara said he's forming out of order. That's what I interpret by that. So what happens is Ichigo survives, though. Bakudo number 99 by Tessai. Ichigo blasts through that with a hollow mask. And then he has a hollow mask, and that's the first time we see that. And the hollow mask, there are many things to comment on that, and I will comment on it. I mean, firstly, the stripes on it, the red stripes on it, increase throughout time as Ichigo uses it, which Rukia comments on after the Yukiora fight. And that is interesting. I mean, all I can say for that is he's becoming more hollow-like as he delves deeper. Simple thing. We'll go into that. But that is the simple thing I could say regarding that subject. But now here's the thing. Because there's one thing I want to talk about. Ichigo's first form as a Shinigami. He has the straps and the sheath, which looks like it's leather or maybe even wood, on his back that holds his sword. None about that we would say are hollow traits. The blue strings may either represent Quincy kind of thing, or it's just represents his reishi, and it snaps off when his reishi reaches the point where he can go Shikai, if you want to interpret it that way. You want to see it, oh, it's blue, so it's Quincy. I mean, you can. I mean, this is so long ago. I don't think Kubo thought of it that way, but the fact that we can think of it that way now, I don't care. Cool. But, you can interpret it that way. Because, of course, when Ichigo was a substitute Shinigami, his Quincy powers were still there, right? He didn't know his sword's name, but his Quincy powers were, were in dominant control, as we see. And he lose control as time goes on, as he delves deeper into hollow powers. So, Zangetsu, I always say Zangetsu, whatever, I don't care. Shiro, Zangetsu, I really don't care. I call them that. Old man Zangetsu. I'm an old fan of Bleach, alright? He's Zangetsu, I don't care. But the Quincy was dominant in Ichigo throughout time. As Ichigo fought more and more and more, his hollow powers became more and more dominant. And of course, the Vaster Lorde is the final result of that. And we'll go into that as time goes on, because that's an element of the Arrancar arc I'm a huge fan of, that I also don't see a lot of people talk about. So, in the case of Ichigo first going Shikai, he emerges, what is it, the Perilous Pit, or the whatever it is, like that thing Uehara called it. He comes out, and this is interesting. So, he has the hollow mask, bandages wrapped around his face, and he has the red beads, which now hold his sheath in place of the straps. And this is one thing I will say. In my opinion, the beads and the bandages are hollow traits. So, of course, Ichigo manifested his Shinigami powers, in that state. And then he gets the bandages, the mask, and the beads. I think all of those traits are hollow related. I don't think the beads or the bandages are Shinigami related. Because his mask comes in. So I think what happened is he manifested his Shinigami powers, so his sword returns, and it does. He has his sword back. It's still broken. But now he has these hollow elements on top of what he has now. So I believe the beads and the bandages are hollow traits. I do. So Ichigo using the bandages to hold his Shikai. Again, I think that's a hollow related thing, personally. You can interpret it that way. The other way you can interpret it is that the beads and the bandages are part of Ichigo's personal Shinigami powers. And then the straps and all that was part of his Shinigami powers he got from Rukia. You can see it that way, but at the same time, I don't agree with that, and the reason is because he still has his sheath. It's just he has the bandages and the beads and everything like that. In my mind, those came from the hollow. Because other than that, again, people say, oh, here's another thing people say. I didn't mention this, but people say, yeah, he has a permanent Shikai because his sealed sword is just a fake sword that he got from using Rukia's powers, and the Shikai is his real Shinigami powers. This is wrong, and the reason is because once he got his Shinigami powers back, he still had his original Zanpakuto for a little bit until he went Shikai. So that's him using his own Shinigami powers. So again, if that sword were fake, then he either wouldn't have it, or it already would be Shikai. But no. So, sorry, no, that one is just wrong. But, so he fights Uehara, and this is a great thing, Uehara can easily slash off Ichigo's sword, and this is in part of what Ichigo's actual ability is, and I'll be going into this probably pretty shortly. But, what Uehara says is Ichigo, he can't control his reishi. His reishi is just emitting out, just fizzles out, right? Uryu said this as well. Ichigo, like, he touches Ichigo's sword and then it just spikes his own, like, Quincy bow. Because Ichigo, he can't control his Ratsu, it's just spiking out. The interesting thing is that once he goes Shikai, you never see that problem again. And this is my theory as to why. Ichigo's ability, his actual unique ability, Quincy related, of course, is that his sword innately absorbs a reishi within itself. So Ichigo, his sealed sword was just overflowing reishi out, fizzling out, right? What I see his Shikai doing and his Bankai doing to a heightened degree is his Shikai contains his reishi within his sword, so he can fight more effectively. And you can see that Ichigo's Shikai is never broken besides when he fights Kenpachi. It's broken there. But he was able to fight Kenpachi for a while, despite how much more powerful Kenpachi was compared to him. So Ichigo, his sword being fragile because his reishi is not condensed, that issue is mitigated a lot when he goes into Shikai. For that reason, the Shikai contains his reishi within his blade. And the way Ichigo describes Getsuga Tensho, he describes it as he fights, his sword gathers more reishi, either just because he absorbs it throughout the air, or because it has something to do with him actually, like, hitting and attacking. His sword gathers reishi into itself, and then the Getsuga Tensho releases that. But that is Ichigo's innate ability with his sword. His sword contains reishi within itself effectively, so he can fight properly, and helps him control his large Reiatsu. His Bankai would just be that to a magnified, insane degree, of course, right? As Bankais are. Bankai is supposed to be like this giant ultra form of your ability. Well, the Bankai would be just exactly that for Ichigo. His sword is about containing his power. His Bankai does exactly that. It shrinks his sword down, and obviously contains his reishi more efficiently, and spikes his power, and he's able to fight a lot. He becomes faster and everything like that. And of course, his Shiakusho is part of his Bankai, similar to Quincy's coating themselves in reishi. A similar principle. So, you can see it as a Quincy-esque Bankai, which would make sense because, again, his Shinigami powers are restricted, so this isn't his true Bankai. So the fact that it's more Quincy-related makes sense. Now, the interesting thing about that, of course, is he uses, like, hollow-esque powers in his Bankai with the black Getsuga and everything like that. That may be because he's emitting Quincy powers for his Bankai. He's actually able to resist the hollow less in his Bankai because, of course, the Quincy's are toxic to hollows, that could be a reason why. His Quincy powers are worse at suppressing the hollow, so his reishi just becomes black because the hollow power, they're kind of just spitting out of that Quincy Bankai, because he can't control his power properly. So you can interpret it that way, and I probably would. But that is interesting, of course. So now that is what I interpret. The beads and the bandages are hollow traits. And of course, whenever you see Shiro, White Ichigo, Hollow Ichigo, he is in that Shiakusho. The beads and the bandages, that the initial Shikai Ichigo. Even in the final arc, when Ichigo gets his final Shikai, the image you see of Shiro is the same thing he's wearing, right? Beads and that form. So I think that is related to hollow powers again. not his Shinigami powers. I don't think so. So, yeah, he gets that. Nothing really to comment on when he learns Bankai or anything like that. I already basically explained how Bankai is. Um, yeah, so there's that. Uh, well, I guess I can explain the Hollow powers at this point. So, this is interesting. I love how Kubo did this. Is the subtlety at which the Hollow comes in the Soul Society. So, Ichigo, when he gets his Shinigami powers back, he has the Hollow mask on. And then what he does is he just takes that off and puts it on his side of his head, and that's kind of cool. When he fights Renji, he is protected by the Hollow mask. It manifests and protects him. Same thing against Kenpachi. And one thing that is great is when Ichigo does the final attack against Kenpachi, he has this blue aura around him, which we later learn is Blue Vina, I guess, from Zangetsu. His blue aura seems kind of quincy. But he has the image in the back of his aura is the Hollow mask, as you can see. So, what I would interpret there, of course, is his wounds are being closed and his aura is being released by Zangetsu. But the bulk of that power, really, Zangetsu's pushing it, but the bulk of that power really is the Hollow. I think that's what Kubo is pushing with that. Right? So, Ichigo beats Kenpachi with that power. And that does appear to be an interesting case where the Hollow powers and the Quincy powers are actually kind of working together. And it is. I mean, of course, in that fight, Hollow Ichigo comes in and helps Ichigo train, which is a great scene. You see Hollow Ichigo hit Ichigo back, and he just has that basic Zanpakuto. And you see this image of Ichigo looking at Shiro, and you just see this red Ryatsu just overflowing around him. And that's Ichigo says, "Oh, that's how it looks like when I fight, actually." Just this huge sword, this just giant Ryatsu all around, all that. Very cool. That's in that way. That's how Ichigo's power looks like to other people. He doesn't occur to him, but that's how it is. So the Hollow powers gain more control over time, which of course is great. The whole Shiro, take care of that power, Zangetsu, because it's all going to be mine one day. Very great scene. The Hollow powers just become more dominant over time, even though Ichigo gains control over them, because him gaining control over them, all about is the die-hard attitude, if there's something I can call it. But, it's Ichigo determination when you see his eyes blue like that, glowing like that. And when he first goes in the Hollow mask, you see his eyes glow blue like that. So, it shows he has the determination to keep it under control. And eventually against Tokiyora just goes to despair mode, and he just loses hope. And then, as the Hollow says, if you don't have that attitude to control me, if you don't keep that up, then I will take any opportunity, and I'll come back. And he does. Vasto Lorde form. So it is interesting that the full body Hollow and the Vasto Lorde are different. What I interpret from that is just simply the Hollow regains its original form. So the Hollow was in Ichigo, and Ichigo's powers were still dominant over him, even as a full body Hollow. So they were changing to Ichigo. So the initial symbol with the red stripes across the side of his mask, that was Ichigo's personal Hollow powers, with the way they looked. The Vasto Lorde and the lined mask from then on represents Shiro regaining his original powers. So he almost gained complete control over Ichigo, basically. Um, so that's the true hollow power right there. Is the Vasto Lorde form. Which, by the way, I'm not even sure if that is a Vasto Lorde, to be honest. Because, I mean, it was what it was. It was like a Shinigami hollow combination experiment by Aizen. So would you call it a Vasto Lorde? I mean, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But, so that's the Vasto Lorde. And I really don't have much to say about the hollow powers, because honestly, they're not really that, like, detailed. There's not much symbology to analyze out of them compared to Ichigo's other powers. They're pretty simple, which is fine. I mean, really, you would just analyze them how they compare with Ichigo's other powers. So with that, we're talking about Final Getsuga Tensho. This is a big one. Again, I am sniveling. Again, hopefully Corona-chan. Hopefully her effect is limited. Hopefully Hopefully this means nothing. Ugh. Yeah. We hope. Anyway, so Final Getsuga Tensho, I have a lot to say about it. Despite how short its effect is in the series, it being present, it's kind of important. And it's kind of cool. So, I am one who has said I think Dangai Ichigo is the strongest form of Ichigo, absolutely. I think he's the second strongest character next to Yuha. I do think Prime Yamamoto is slightly stronger, by the way, if he has Zankai no Tachi North. And all that, like the different forms of it, because the way Yuha said it, he might not have actually had that. So, if Yamamoto doesn't have his different forms that he used against Yuha when he was in Prime, then I won't count that. But if he did, I will count it as slightly stronger than Dangai Ichigo. But if he didn't, that means Dangai Ichigo is the second strongest next to Yuha, and I believe that. So let's go over what this is and what this affected, because it affected, I would say, more than you think. So, firstly, the Final Getsuga Tensho, I believe, is an ability exclusive to Ichigo and Isshin. I don't believe it's any Shinigami can just use this final move that just, takes away all their Reishi. I don't believe that. I also don't believe it is Quincy related. A lot of people say, oh, it's his full standing, his Let's Steal thing, and I don't think it is. It is related to Quincy powers because that is tied to Shinigami powers. It's tied. We'll go into that. Obviously, he looks more like a Zangetsu old man, but then he does Shiro, but it is not a... Here's the thing. If Isshin can learn it, which he implies that he does, he can learn it. He did not, but he can. It's not a Quincy ability. It can't be. It is not a Quincy ability. It is a Shinigami ability. Not a hollow ability either for that reason. So, due to that, it needs to be a Shinigami ability. Now, why does it manifest looking more like Yuha Zangetsu, Old Man Zangetsu, than Shiro? Because obviously it's a sword fusion. Well, there is interesting things to comment on it. The first thing, again, is the bandages. He's covered in bandages and a mask of bandages as well. And I've said the bandages, I think, are a hollow trait, not a Shinigami trait. So we can say that's Shinigami-esque. He doesn't have a Shihakusho. His Shihakusho is at his lower waist, and it's just black reishi at this point. Just these black flames, basically, that manifest his Shihakusho. Same thing with his sword. Which seems to be emerging from his Shihakusho, or maybe even his hair, and he forms that into a sword. But we've noted two things already. Bandages, hollow trait, black Shiakusho, Shinigami trait, and then the hair, which would be the Quincy trait. There you go. He also has red eyes, which I'm not sure where that comes from at all. Could come from any of them, honestly. Ichigo never has red eyes in any other case, so I don't really know. But that's what I interpreted out of it. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is those elements, the bandages and the hair. Firstly, you should look at the order they disappear, right? Because Ichigo does Mugetsu, and then when he comes back, the bandages disappear first. The bandages disappear first, then the hair disappears, then the Shiakusho disappears. In that order. I'm not sure why. Maybe because the hollow disappears, and then the Quincy powers remain because, I don't know, maybe the hollow powers are stronger, or maybe they're the weakest link in what Final Getsuga is related to, or whatever. But, I mean, I don't even just, but, you know, his Shiakusho remains last. That comes back to, oh, she's gone, hey! Back to a normal camera view, okay. My shoulders can rest. Okay, we're back, okay. Love her, but, you know. Okay, we're back. I'm a bit excited now. We're back. So, all those three traits are, you know, Shinigami, Quincy, hollow traits that Ichigo shows there. Black Reishi, I just think that is his pure Reishi. No effects on anything else, or maybe it's his pure Shinigami Reishi. Just pure, because again, it's a Shinigami power. So I think that's his pure Shinigami Reishi is black, like that. And then the others have their effects on it, but it's primarily a Shinigami ability. So what I'm saying though is the Reishi Black Shiakusho, which you may think it's a Quincy thing when I mention it, but nah, it looks Shinigami to me. But because considering it's his sword, but what I'm saying is that if Ichigo didn't have Quincy or Hollow abilities, if he did Final Getsuga, what it would look like is just he would just have that black Shihakusho on himself, and then that would form the sword. The bandages and the hair are the Quincy and Hollow traits of it. Because they're melded, right, obviously, to do it. The Quincy and the Hollow Shinigami powers, they all meld into that entity, that white entity. So they're all fused as one power, I think, just to give Ichigo his full power. Still doesn't have an Asuchi, so his Bankai is still not the dual swords, but doesn't really matter. And we'll go into the design, but you know, for that reason, I think those are just the Hollow and Quincy traits added onto it, because it's his purest, strongest form of Reishi. But the ability is a Shinigami ability, I believe. Because again, Isshin can learn it. So if Isshin could do it, what I think it actually would be is it would be similar, except like Isshin, he has like his Engetsu is like a fire ability. So what might happen is he would get like a fire Shiakusho and do like a Final Getsuga, and it's like fire or something like that. If he did Final Getsuga, that's what I think it would look like. Shirtless mode, yes, because Ichigo is shirtless in Mugetsu. So yeah, shirtless Isshin with like a fire Shiakusho, and he does like, you know, Final Getsuga, and it's like fire. Sounds epic to me. Too bad we never saw it. That's what I imagine it would look like. Comparing it to Ichigo for those reasons, that's what I imagine it would look like. Although Ichigo just with the shirtless, you know, the black Shiakusho and the aura, even without the hair or the bandages, it would look pretty cool anyway. Although Mugetsu looks really cool. So, okay. So that's what I explained. I explained why Mugetsu looks the way it does. But let's talk about Dangai Ichigo. This form, again, I think what it is he beat Zangetsu into submission, and Zangetsu's full power, so his he is given Final Getsuga, and Final Getsuga gives him this form. Now, we don't know if this is related to the Final Getsuga, And what I mean by that is, if Ishin got the final Getsugo, we don't know if he would get a Dangai form, if you know what I mean. I don't know. But what appears to be the case, Ichigo, I think he's in a permanent Bankai. So what I think happens with the final Getsuga is your sword accepts you to be able to do it. And then you go into a permanent Bankai. And I don't know if the sword fusion is part of that. It probably is, because the final Getsuga Mugetsu is a sword fusion ability. So you probably need to have a really large amount of ratio to be able to even try it. So, what probably happens is that you're in a permanent Bankai, and that is temporary. I think, because I think what Ichigo would have lost his powers anyway, even if he didn't do Mugetsu or something like that, or he needed to do it, right? A lot of people say, like, oh, well, Daga Ichigo seemed to be handling Aizen pretty fine anyway. Could he not have just, won without even doing Final Getsuga? I think it's kind of like a thing where you need to do it. Like you have a limited amount of time. So you get a permanent Bankai, and the full power of your ability is released in that time. And you can do another release to go into Final Getsuga. And that releases all your powers, and that's a final sword fusion. And that is where you do your final attack. Because this is one thing, remember, Final Getsuga is the form, which is the weird thing. The form is Final Getsuga, Mugetsu is the attack. Which you'd think it would be the reverse, right? When you look at the name, it makes a little bit more sense, because Mugetsu means moonless night, which is very symbolic for Ichigo, because his sword is slaying moon. Getsuga Tensho is moon fang, heaven piercer. So it's all piercing heaven, moon, offensive things, attacking things related to the moon. Moonless night, the moon is over. His sword is gone. The night is here. Symbolic, cool, I love it. But, So, that's what I think it is. Dangai form is that. So you get the partial sword fusion with Dangai form as your abilities push to their absolute limits, and then you have access to the final Getsuga, where that is a final sword fusion, a complete sword fusion. The only one we see in the series, by the way, a complete sword fusion. Aizen had a partial one, Ichigo got a partial one beforehand. That was a complete one. And then you do your final attack. So, Ishin, he would have a Dangai form. I guess his sword would somehow fuse with him as well. I mean, Ichigo, what happened with him is the chain, like, wrapped around his arm from Tensazangetsu. I don't know if it's like, he got this, like, gauntlet on his arm, like this black gauntlet. I don't know if that was, like, the chain had extended so long that it, like, was thick enough to wrap around his arm completely, or it's like the handle of the sword kind of, like, extended out and, like, melded around his hand. And then the chain just extended from his hand. Like, the gauntlet on his hand is literally like the handle part of it now. Either way, it's epic, and I think that's what it is. It's a partial sword fusion. Aizen had a partial sword fusion at that point. And he keeps the sword fusion, again. Like, his sword fusion is at a further evolution when he's in Muken compared to when he's Butterfly Aizen. But it appears to be similar to Monster Aizen, but that's another video. Compared to Ichigo. But other than that, the manji on the sword is extended outward. We have another one. Sorry for the wait, but so the manji is extended outward, and I didn't bring up the manji on Ichigo's Bankai. I'm not exactly sure what it means, because one thing that's interesting is that the manji never appears on his final Bankai. Kubo retains a lot of the traits he had for his earlier swords for his final, for the symbolism, but the manji is not there. So I don't know what it means. If I were to guess anything, it would be like a melding between Ichigo's powers, right? Maybe it's like a thing where, again, his Bankai is like a Quincy thing, but his hollow Reishi is being released because the fact that his Quincy is manifested means that he can't control the hollow as much, kind of a thing. So it shows a manji to show like symbology, symbiosis between the powers. And maybe that makes sense, especially considering like Vasta Lorde Ichigo still just uses that same Bankai. The manji represents like symbiosis between them working together basically. So the manji extending out would be like that exaggerated. Now they're completely together, kind of a thing. It's just weird that the manji just doesn't appear at all for Ichigo's final form. So I don't know what to say about it. it's strange. But regardless of that, it's Nangai Ichigo. Of course, Nangai Ichigo, he doesn't have Ryatsu. His Reishi is all contained within him, and I think that's a thing exclusive to Ichigo. Again, I said his ability is to contain Reishi within his sword, which helps him fight. And he can release it in big attacks, like he gets Getensho, or even other things like where he hits the ground and shoots that, emits Reishi like that. Little things like that. That's his ability. So that's his Shikai ability, contains Reishi within him. His Bankai ability, that exaggerated. Then obviously the Dangai would be that to its greatest extent, where it's contained within him completely, and it just enhances his physical stats, and he doesn't even emit Ryatsu, right? Because his Bankai improved his physical stats, like with the speed and everything, but he still had Ryatsu, of course, right? So that's what I would interpret that to be. And when he does final Getsuga, then his Reishi is all released. Again, in the pure black form. I think that's his pure Shinigami Reishi. Independent of any of his other powers. Is that blackness. Very cool. But I think that is all over the final Getsuga. Again, more loaded than you think. There's quite a lot to analyze with it. If you care. Because you might not care, considering how short it is in the series. It's not even brought up again afterwards. But, okay. Continuing. Furubringer. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So, this one, I actually don't have as much to analyze as you might think, but there is still things to analyze. So, the full brain. I said the manji never shows up again. That's true, but, well, that's for his final form. Because something that's interesting is the fact that Ichigo, his full bring, he does it with the combat pass, and it manifests the manji guard. That's his initial full bring, with the, like, hollow red reishi. And what I interpreted that is simply put, keep in mind, Ichigo, he's using the memory of his power from the combat pass. So the combat pass remembers his Bankai. That's what it is, obviously. So it makes a shape similar to his Bankai. That's what it's remembering. So that's what I would compare that to, right? He's remembering, the combat pass remembers his Bankai, so it manifests the guards similar to his Bankai, which would also explain why his initial full-bring form is more like his Bankai than it is like his Shikai, which it seems like reversed, right? Because his complete full-bring looks more like his Shikai, yet his initial full-bring looks more like his Bankai. The reason is, I would say, is because it's interesting, right? Because his initial full bring, again, after the whole training thing where he gets the robe of like red reishi, that is what his Bankai is like, coating him in reishi, except now it's not controlled. It's not like a Shihakusho manifest. It's like this incomplete reishi trying to form a Shihakusho, the image of what it's like. Similar to his Bankai, again, coming from his combat pass is what he uses for it. But maybe you'd want to see. Yeah, there you go. That works. That's a nice angle. but he would lose my train of thought. So he has that initial full bring similar to his Bankai, and he even manifests like the reishi into a sword, which is most similar to Mugetsu if it's similar to anything else. But again, it seems kind of Quincy-like, although again, Red Reishi, so it's very Bankai-like, and it has those same kind of traits that you see in other cases from Ichigo. But the final form is more like a Shikai. He has the trench knife. It's like melded with the combat pass to like create a handle. He has a sheath for it too. First time Ichigo has had a legit sheath since his sealed sword, by the way, is with the full bring. The full bring brings an actual sheath. I can respect that. We'll talk about that later for his final Shikai too. But no, he gets that, and he has his Kamen Rider form with those things, around him. He's got this kind of like black garb with these white, what do you call them, lacings or armor around him. I'm not sure what you call it, but he has that. And the pattern, is kind of similar to like Chad, kind of. It's like an armor kind of thing, and they even say his full bring is like that. It's like a coat full bring. I don't remember the word exactly. I should remember the term, but it's one that surrounds him, which makes sense. That is his power. That is his unique power. Remember that. I'm trying to hammer that home. Ichigo has a unique power. That's what it is, I believe. So, I'm down. So, that's his final full bring. He loses that full bring. He does show interesting abilities, like he moves similar to his Bankai. Again, his power is more similar to his Bankai, but in that form, it's becoming more similar to his Shikai. Again, probably because his real powers within himself are close to returning, so his own power is more exemplified in it than the Bankai memory. But the abilities are still like a Bankai, because the power is still coming from the combat pass, so there's that. It also has the unique Fullbring traits, because Fullbring does have some traits. So that's what I would get out of that. He is still able to shoot those like projectiles he shot out of his combat pass in his final Fullbring as well. He does that. Oh, that's it for his version. But he does that, right? He shoots out those projectiles and he moves really quickly, like in his Bankai. So combatively, it's like his Bankai more so. So there's that. Okay, so here we get to a big one: the full bring Shikai. Now, within my power levels, I do a very interesting thing, and a lot of people have discussed this before. A lot of people say watching Fullbring Ichigo fight feels like it was as if you were watching Ichigo fight with his Hollow Mask in terms of the power he demonstrates, even though he doesn't have one, and he never uses the Hollow Mask ever again. Here's my explanation for that, and this is what I do within my power levels as well. When the Hollow and the when you see Zangetsu and Shiro, Master Lord, they fuse into that form, that fused form. It does look similar to Ichigo's form when he does his Hollow form, it is Final Shikai and Bankai. That it does look similar to that, but oh God, the sniveling. Christ. I don't have tissues on the head, so I just gotta use toilet paper. God. Let's get it out. Let's get it out. Let's get it out. Sorry, I don't know what happens to me. I swear this doesn't happen in any other case. I make a video and this happens. I don't understand. Maybe videos make me sick. Let's hope not. Let's hope I'm not on Corona, the Corona hit list. Let's hope I'm okay after this. Pray for you, pray for me. Yeah, let's hope. My God. Okay. I don't know, but okay. So what I do is I do that exactly that. So within the multipliers, take care of a problem at its root. Don't let it fester. Well, barely any left. Good. Good. Okay. Again, let's hope I'm okay. Hopefully this ain't my last words, right? But sorry for the delays, man. I mean, if you're still here, God bless. But so what I do on my power levels is I add um, a hollow boost on top of Ichigo's base stats, and a full bring boost. So for full bring Shikai, he gets a 1.5 times for the full bring. Full bring is always 1.5, and then the hollow mask is 2 times, double his power. Right. So the way like that works like with the half mask as well. Like for a half mask, he gets a 1.5 half boost. Right. Full mask, double boost. Simple principle. So with the way the full bring Shikai works is he has a sub hollow boost on top of him and a full bring boost, 1.5 and 2 times, free, and that's just on top of him. It's not even like it's not an ability. It's just base thing that he has, right? Um, so his power level in that is 4,500. His base, what his normal Shikai is 1,500, and if you do that times 1.5 times 2 is 4,500. So that's how you get that number. You know, Bankai is always 6 times, so his Bankai is 27,000. Same as Grimjaw as well. It's very cool. Um, I had to do that. I had to make Grimjaw equal to full bring Ichigo. Just because, I'm a fan of Grimjaw. The Grimjaw boys, he can't fight Final Ichigo, but he can fight, I think he's equal to full bring Bankai Ichigo in Resurrection. I think he is. Oh man, what a time, what a time. Anyway, so he has that boost automatically. So that's what I'm saying. Is full bring Ichigo. He's basically he has this free full bring boost, which everyone knows he has a full bring boost, and he has a free hollow boost. And the reason he gets that is because this could be the same for Danga Ichigo as well. The moment the hollow and the Shinigami fused into that form, the hollow is now just a part of his powers, and he gets that automatic hollow boost free, which is why he's like that. It's not the same when he's in learning full bring. That's different. Um, full bring is very different how I did it. Fun to calculate, but it's not the same. But for his proper Shinigami powers, he has that. He has an automatic hollow boost, and he has an automatic full bring boost, and he'll keep that into his final form as well. He'll keep that, and that's what I believe he has. So yeah, he has a full bring boost and a hollow boost. So he doesn't use the hollow mask anymore because the hollow has literally melded with the Quincy and Shinigami spirit, as we see when he learns Final Getsu. And therefore, he just has the hollow powers innately on top of himself. So he doesn't need to manifest the mask or anything anymore. He just has that power, is what I'm saying. And a lot of people interpret it to be like that anyway. So that is my explanation for it. I could analyze the design of like full bring Ichigo. He just has those like full bring markings around himself, even around his legs as well, which the final form does not keep. He doesn't keep all those markings. We would probably just say the full bring is more dominant at that point because his powers are still restricted, so the full bring has a greater, effect on him compared to his final form. Because those markings, the full bring markings, are not on his final form. But I will talk about his full bring and his final form as well, because it's still there. I will talk about it. But yeah, he has the full bring markings surrounding him. When he goes into Bankai, some of those markings in the Black Shiakusho become white. If you want to see the black as representing Shinigami and the white as representing Quincy, feel free to. An interesting thing about his Bankai is that the bottom of the robe is actually segmented now into like 3 different segments. It's difficult to phrase, but that bottom part always had this like red tint to it, which looks similar to Zangetsu's cloak actually, or his jacket there, which made Ichigo look kind of similar to Zangetsu. And that cloak that he has looks kind of similar to Zangetsu, so another Quincy comparison for you. But in the Bankai, it's not actually like they're joined together, because in the Bankai earlier, that's what it was like. Like he was wearing like a jacket, kind of. But in the full bring, if you look at it, it's actually open, and you can see kimono under that, the white one, the white part of it, under that, but it has these black full-bring markings around it, so you don't see it in full detail. But if you look at it, he actually has like an open white robe, which is the only form he does. Out of any of his forms, that's the only one that has an open white robe, where you don't have just the black and the white robe just interlacing with each other. It's the only time that happens, which is interesting. Um, the sword, okay, the sword. This is a important one. So his full bring Shikai, it's more curved and everything like that. That's obvious. Why it would be the effects of full bring. That's all I would say. Although his Shikai, this is interesting. His Shikai has a handle. His Shikai has a handle. It still has bandages, but it has a handle. And it also has a chain going down. When he goes to the Bankai, the handle's basically the same, but he does have sharpened like edges along the sword, which do look cool. But the other thing about it is the chain is extended. Not as much as Final Getsuga, but the chain is extended, which probably shows like how powerful he is, the extended chain. Of course, the interesting thing about the chain is the fact that his final Bankai, the chain links into the other sword. They're connected by those chains. So that's what the chain actually is. It's actually a connector between both of his swords. Very cool. But, of course, in the other case, or Danga Ichigo, it just wrapped around him. It extended so long. Very cool. Kubo is aware, the chain kind of represents Ichigo's power, so I'm a fan. Well, the fact that his Shikai has a chain is interesting. Why exactly? I mean, I just think the chain represents the connector between his powers. It could show that his sword is now more Shikai, or his Shikai is more Bankai-like now. Just because it's more powerful, it has a handle, those things. Maybe because the full bring just made it more powerful. It's still not a complete form, so even though it's more like what his Bankai will be, his Bankai is incomplete too. So I just think those are full bring effects, personally. The chain is actually gray. It's not a black chain for his Shikai chain. Which, by the way, I'm sure a lot of you, didn't even notice he actually had a chain for his Shikai. And it's the only time his Shikai has a chain. His final form Shikai does not. It's also the only time his Shikai has a handle too. So I'm guessing the full bring changed his Shikai, maybe made the Quincy and Hollow elements kind of closer. Because his final sword, obviously, the Quincy half and the Hollow half are separated two different swords. So maybe in this case, they're actually coming closer together, maybe because of the full bring affecting the Hollow powers in a way. Kind of like that. But anyway, that is what I will say about his full bring. We're done with that. So now we're going to talk about the final Ichigo form. After an hour, we're here. Should be expected, probably. There's a lot to talk about with this. So we're here. Final Shikai Ichigo, final Bankai Ichigo, final form. So this is what his sword should look like, by the way. This is what his sword properly looks like. You can see all of the elements, of his powers at play in this form. And this is one thing that's interesting. Firstly, the Bankai no longer has the Shihakusho. That is gone. So his Shihakusho is the same, regardless of in Bankai or in Shikai. This is also the only form where his Bankai makes his sword larger instead of smaller. So beforehand it was always his sword became smaller in Bankai. This is the only time where it isn't. So let's analyze it. There are no beads. There are bandages that hold the sword, but there are no beads that has been in all of Ichigo's other Shikai forms. Now, Ichigo wears a normal Shihakusho, but he has a white robe around his waist. I would say this white robe represents his Quincy powers. Now, you might think he also has this white mound around his chest. And this white mound, if you look closely, is the thing that holds his swords. You might say that is also his Quincy powers because it's white. If you look at the official artwork, though, you will notice the white mound around him that is in an X shape, similar to Fullbring, is a lighter shade of white compared to the white robe around his legs, which is, slightly tanner shade of white. I am saying the white mound around him in the X shape, that is his Fullbring. That is not Quincy. That is his Fullbring. Because Fullbring is white, as we saw with his final Fullbring and everything like that. It's white. And it's in an X shape, so, related to Fullbring. Fullbring has that image. Execution, of course, yeah. So, yeah. And that white mound holds his sword, too. Now, he doesn't have beads, like I said. The interesting thing, though, is he does have this shoulder pad right here, and then he also has one around his hip here. And those shoulder pads hold his swords. He has a sheath on his back, which also is wrapped in bandages, and then he has this sheath on his waist, which holds his sword, which is also wrapped in bandages. So, now if you look at the detail on that, it has this red design on it, which, if you want to say, looks similar to the beads. So the beads held his sword before, his Shikai. So if you want to say, which of course would make sense, his Fullbring and his Hollow powers are melded because Fullbring and Hollow are connected. So the White Mound is connected to the Hollow powers, which those little guard things that are red look similar to the beads, same type of thing, and they hold his sword, and the sword has bandages as well, a Hollow trait. There you go. All of his powers are represented within that design. And I like that. And his Shihakusho, too, is very basic. Like the Shinigami Shihakusho, it's very basic. It looks, if you took away all the other things, the Quincy element, the Fullbring, Hollow element, it would just look like a regular Shinigami outfit. Look even more basic than when he first became a Shinigami, to be honest. Very nice. Very nice, Kubo Sanyo. Let's see. Other elements. He doesn't have any of the Fullbring markings around his body that he did when he went into Fullbring Shikai. I would guess just because the Fullbring at this point is like a physical kind of thing, object, and its influence is lessened compared to before because his powers were restricted before, and now they're at full capacity, so its effect is lessened. He does have these like black wristband things, which if you want to say that is Fullbring, feel free to. He never has that in any other form, so I don't know what to say about that. Yeah, Mound holds a sword. White robe is Quincy, and of course that white robe, unlike before where his robe, was black. It was a Shihakusho, Meldo Shinigami powers. Now it's its own thing, white, not black now, which means you don't get the whole red tint on it. None of that red tint. Just white for Quincy, black for Shinigami. Pretty simple, pretty good. Of course, when he goes Bankai, none of the design changes. He does have his Hollow form, which he needs Quincy Reishi to get. I guess it's like Quincy Reishi like spikes his Hollow Reishi in response. It like triggers that response of the Hollow coming out. It's kind of weird the way that works. He just can't control the Hollow on his own completely. I guess. Yeah. But all that does is very simple. A couple Vasto Lorde markings. He gets a Hollow hole. And he has this side of his face with the lining, red lining, and his eye is blackened here. Then he gets the Bastolore horn. It looks similar, but not exactly the same as Zangetsu fused with the Bastolore. But it's not the same thing. But it would make sense that would be his equivalent to a Hollow Mask after they formed, right? But he doesn't have the ability to spawn in a Hollow Mask anymore. Again, I say he has a Hollow boost automatically, but his full Hollow power is that. But someone's on the door. But so again, the Bankai. Well, okay, the swords. The sword on his back looks most similar to his original Shikai. It has this hole kind of in it, like this carving through it. Like it's not a complete like blade. It actually has this parting through it. No handle, bandages surrounded, of course, as you'd expect. No guard. Looks kind of like the old Shikai, basically. It looks more like a saw, or like a. It looks even more like an actual, like, huge butter knife than the original Shikai, if you ask me. That element is actually even more emphasized, I would say. Then his Quincy sword is smaller. I think people like calling it a Bowie knife or something. It has a guard. Um, it curves out around the blade, um, surrounding his hand like that. Not like any other sword he has. But it's shorter, more looking like a knife, really. Um, Now, I have said, of course, Ichigo, before I said, he has this power of absorbing and containing a ratio within himself, then shooting that out with powerful attacks. In this case, the Quincy sword and the Shinigami sword do that exclusively. Which would explain why Ichigo tends. He fights around half the time he'll fight with both. But if he's going to fight with one, he'll fight with the bigger one, which is more like his old one. And what I would say is, of course, the Quincy one absorbs Reishi. Even on its own, it absorbs Reishi while he fights. And then he can use his other sword to do a Getsuga and blast that out. So that's the role of the Quincy one, to absorb Reishi, kind of power him up. And then his other sword explodes that Reishi. So they are symbiotic in that way. Again, even better represented when he goes Bankai. Which I'll say. I mean, the last thing I have to say about the Shikai is that his Quincy sword does actually have bandages on it. So, if you consider that relevant. Less so than the Shinigami one, but say what you will. But, Final Bankai. Both of the swords look almost the same in this form, which may be because his powers are all fused into one, and as you see, the chain links both swords. So it seems like they're both just together, and as Ichigo's full power just erupted, right? And the guard kind of the Quincy one, doesn't wrap around completely anymore, but it's part of the blade that goes down. It doesn't look much like his old Bankai, other than the fact that the handle is the same, except there's no manji, and it has the chain. Other than that, it looks quite different. And then there's, of course, we don't get to see much of it, obviously. We don't get to see much of it. Ichigo does do a Getsuga in it, to finish off Yuha, I believe. I don't remember if that was a Getsuga or a slash. No, he does a Getsuga, and then he just does a slash on to finish Yuha. But, yeah. But, okay. So, there's that, and, I don't get to see much of it, so he can do a Getsuga. I don't know what the color of the Getsuga is. I'm guessing it's a red. We'll see when the anime comes out. And I guess it's just super powerful. I don't know if it improves his speed anymore. I don't get the impression it does. Because, all those Quincy elements seem to just be a part of his base power now. It doesn't seem to be like a Bankai. Like his Bankai just seems to be like his pure Bankai. He uses powers together into just super swords, linked with the chain. Yeah, that seems to be what it is at this point. Just super powerful swords. Guess what you'd expect. But, yeah, he does a Getsuga. Okay. This is the final thing. Final thing. And I don't understand it myself. It's like a symbolic thing, and I'm okay with it. Yuha, he predicts the future. He sees Ichigo with the original Shikai cutting him down. Ichigo slashes at Yuha, and his sword breaks apart again. It's like shattering again. But then the Shikai, the sword looks like his original Shikai, and he slashes Yuha and kills him with it. I don't know what that means. I mean, I like it. I think it's cool. I just don't know if that's like an ability of it. I don't know if you can remove the white part. You can choose to do that and then use the Shikai like that. I don't know if it's the swords become one sword, and then they become that form, right? Because you see that like final promo image of Bleach, and you see Ichigo. He's standing there, his robe's kind of open, but he has like the shikai or his bankai that looks like a shikai on his back with the bandages and everything. It looks like how his old sword was, how he held it. I wish we got to see that. Ichigo, just after he defeated Yuha, put his sword on his back like he always did, right? In bandages like it always is. I think that would be cool. It looks almost exactly like the original shikai, other than the fact that it has the same handle as his bankai. So if you say that's like the complete form, cool. Like, I like it. I just don't really understand it. But, I don't know. I don't know if you can remove it. I don't know if it's something you choose to do. I don't know if it was an accident. I don't know if it's... I guess it's stronger because it finishes off Yuha. I don't know if it's both swords fused together. I don't know what to say about it. But it is cool, and that's the final form of his sword. So, okay. That is Ichigo. His designs analyzed. His powers analyzed. Theories about them. Reasons for the permanent Shikai. Final Getsuga described. Fullbring described. I don't know what else more I could talk about with this. No, that's it. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say. Well, it took a while, but that's it. That's it. Okay. Hopefully the sun shining so bright on me doesn't come out too bad in the picture. I don't know. I'm shining so brilliantly at the moment. Alright. Okay, that's Bleach. I don't know how much more Bleach stuff I'll make. Oh, I have more to make, yeah. I have more to make. But, that was a video, and that's done. Thank you for watching. If you got through it, thank you. If you have anything to comment, please do. Rate, comment, subscribe. Thank you. Please do. Thank you very much. Bye. Oh, where'd my mouse go? Where'd my mouse go? Oh, my mouse. My mouse. Oh, my mouse is gone. My mouse is gone. Got bloopers.